Hey everyone, let's do a little overview of our first theory, ecocriticism. So, ecocriticism is a particular perspective of literature where you're looking at issues of the character's environment, either a natural environment or a man-made environment, so urban, country, the woods, a shopping mall. So the relationship between literature and the physical environment. And we're looking at that relationship from both the point of view of the author, what the author feels about the environment. We can discern that through how the author writes about the environment, and the character's relationship to their surroundings. So it's from both. It's for both authors and characters. So what this presentation does is provides you with a lot of topics, some in the form of questions that you can ask about a piece of literature if you're employing this particular lens. So you may go through, if you are interested in eco-criticism, and maybe you're writing about Jack London's To Build a Fire, you may go through here and see one or two topics that seem to relate best to the story, and then you can address those issues in your essay. So one of the topics you can look at. So one of the issues you can look at is called anthropomorphism, and this means giving human traits to non-human objects or elements of nature or animals. So I think the example I gave in class was something like the wind was poking its head through the open window. Well, the wind doesn't really have a head, right? So that's giving characteristics of humanity to objects that wouldn't normally have that. It's also looking at nature from the perspective of, is it evil? Is nature helpful to humans, or does it care about humans at all? So there are a lot of questions in these slides, and I'm not going to address all of them. I'm just going to point out a couple. So how do the characters, these are some topics that have to do with how the character relates to the environment. So one of the big issues is, do they control or subdue nature? Is it in their personality that they want to pave over all of nature and put up a parking lot, like the song says? Do they want to cut down the big oak tree that's been there for 100 years in the town square? Why do they want to destroy nature? Are they caretakers or destroyers? Do they peacefully coexist with their environment? And we were looking, of course, at the Welty story, at Phoenix Jackson's trip through the woods. There are two environments in that story, right? She spends most of the story in the forest, walking along the path and encountering obstacles along the way. And then the last little bit of the story takes place in the city or the town, where she goes to the I don't know if it's a clinic or a doctor's office or what it is, to get the medication. So how does she react to these environments? So we can look at maybe if I'm in a literature class and I've had to read 3 stories by Eudora Welty, I might look at how the author's concept of nature changed over time. What was nature like in her earlier works? What was it like in the later works? And how did the characters relate to the environment? Do we see any kind of environmental disasters and crises reflected in the text? And that relates to this one right here. What parallels can be drawn between the sufferings and oppression of groups of people and treatment of the land? So both this one and the idea about environmental disasters and crises. This sort of goes along with the idea that writing about the land can be a reflection of writing about people. So, for example, in science fiction works, we often have characters on other planets, right, facing their own ecological disasters, maybe from overpopulation or a nuclear disaster or things like that. when it's clear that the author is making comments about how humans are creating their own ecological disasters on Earth. So is that sort of thing happening? Is the author, in whatever story you're examining through this eco-critical lens, are the characters prompting some sort of ecological disaster of their own, or are the people in the story or novel or whatever it is you're reading being treated in the same way the land is being treated? Okay. I think that's about it. Yeah, about the last issue that you often see is the author examining whether the environment is fertile or a wasteland. So in other words, is the land and the people, are they healthy? Is the society healthy like the land is healthy? Or is the society falling apart just like the land is falling apart? All right. So I'll give you a couple of additional resources that might help you out. But again, there are a lot of different questions you can ask when you're looking at a work through the lens of eco-criticism. You don't want to try and do all of them. You just want to pick one or two and apply that to your work.